I want to give a really, really warm welcome to comrades and friends who've travelled from all around the country and the world to come tonight to Marxism 2015. My name is Emma Davies. I'm a member of the SWP in Islington and I'm a teacher. It gives me immense pleasure to say that we're starting Marxism today on the back of an absolutely incredible strike that has brought London to a standstill. And there's no better way to start tonight's rally by paying tribute to a group of workers who on the day after Osborne announced another array of vicious cuts has shown the immense power, and that is Unjum Mirza from the Aslef.
Thanks, Emma. I mean, it was an absolute glorious day today. Not one train moved. Not one train. And it's really quite historic because we got all the grades, the trains, the stations, the engineers, the fleet, the signal techs, the P-way, everybody out on strike today. It's an absolute historical moment. Also, quite historically, we got all four unions out as well. That's Aslef, my union, the RMT, Unite and the TSSA. And we're all having a bit of an argument as to what the comparator is. Was it 10 years ago, well, just over 10 years ago in 2002, or was it 1989? There's probably an argument here that you'll have to go back to 1926 to get a moment like this. It's really, really been that long. And it's been an incredible week, because on Tuesday, they were they were remembering 10 years after the bombings, and the tube workers were seen as heroes. The day after, of course, we were all as villains because we decided, and we politically consciously decided, that we were going to start our strike on the very day that George Osborne announced his austerity budget. It was the absolute right thing to do, and we were attacked by Mike Brown, by Boris Johnson, saying that this was an overtly political strike. Well, yes. Idiots. And the sheer response from the membership, and when you think about the ballots, this is in the context of not just austerity and a new, Tory majority, but the trade union bill. Amongst a number of things, the trade union bill actually further shackling the union's ability to fight. Well, the Aslef result that came out was 97.6% yes for a strike, for strike action, on 81% turnout. The other 19% were on annual leave, so we'll accept that. But the response today was absolutely phenomenal. And all the things we always say about strikes came out today. Actually, not just solidity and the solidarity, but also how people's ideas change. I mean, Eddie MacDonald, who's a rep down in my depot in Brixton, who actually this morning at 4 o'clock saying that, oh shit, we're going to get our heads kicked in. By the end of the day, saying that I really can't believe this level of support we've got and the level of anger against the Tories, it's been a real eye-opener. People shift, and that's what the struggle does. It's absolutely essential to our politics. Two other things I like to say, and I'm going to be really quick here. Firstly, the comrades down in Brixton and across London and on the picket lines were absolutely phenomenal. The solidarity that was delivered onto our picket line from the NUT, led by our comrades from Wandsworth, from Lambeth, from Unison, from UCU, was absolutely astonishing and actually had a huge impact on the strikers from the RMT, from Aslef, TSSA and Unite. Absolutely wonderful sense of solidarity. But there's something else, you see. Solidarity is the bedrock of trade unionism. As socialists, though, the bedrock of socialism is internationalism, which is why we did two things. I'll show you the banner in a minute. The banner, which is half in Greek for the Aslef. We also had this afternoon on the picket line to explain the banner and what's going on in Greece. We had a little meeting on Greece, and this is really quite astonishing on the picket line, because not only did we discuss Syriza and the trade unions, because we got a wonderful solidarity message from the Athens metro workers, but we discussed the strategy of SEC and Antasia. And there, linking what the party did in the morning on delivering that solidarity and what we're trying to do in terms of the solidarity and the action that we're trying to build outside of Parliament, where real power lies, trying to do that. We did a collection for SEC, not for the trade unionists, not for Syriza, but for SEC, and striking workers collected £160 for SEC. So, struggle is absolutely essential, absolutely the heart of our politics, but our politics and socialist politics and internationalism is absolutely necessary for all the fights that we're about to face against austerity, not against just Osborne, but right at the height of the struggle. And of course, you're going to hear Panos a little later on. Do you want to have a wee look at the banner?
All right, thank you, Unjum. Let you wrap that. Our next speaker is helping out with wrapping up the banner, so building solidarity. All right, so our next speaker, I'm very pleased to announce, is Helen Davies, a leading member of Unison in Barnet, who has been consistently leading in the fight against cuts and privatisation, and actually is fresh off the picket lines as well, as they were on strike yesterday.
Yeah, I am the branch chair of Barnet Unison and also, again, re-elected to the NEC of Unison. I'll come to that right at the end. Now, I don't know if our fight could have happened. I want to pay tribute here to Candy Udwin and Dave Carr, who led a strike, an unofficial strike, back in the 90s over privatisation of their hospital. And, you know, that led to discussions, I think, quite serious discussions in the trade union movement about how to organise against privatisation. And I'm not sure our campaign would have happened and our fight would have happened without that kick-start. So I'd like to thank Candy for that. We're a local government branch, so it's not quite as spectacular as the strike that you've had today from the tube workers. This is a couple of thousand workers, but it has been a very long dispute. We've been fighting since 2008. That's when the council announced to the trade unions that everything was going to change, we need a new way of doing things, and we know that that doesn't mean socialism, doesn't it? Particularly as it was a Tory council. So we sniffed that mass privatisation was on the cards, and we started campaigning already then. 2010, the Tories got a bigger, won more seats in the council, and obviously you had the condemned government, and they saw that as their opportunity now to really go for it. And Barnet is Thatcher's backyard, so it's not favourable territory for fighting Tories. But Barnet isn't the whole. Thatcher isn't the whole picture, obviously. And I think if we can do what we've done there, then it's possible to do this everywhere, because nothing is given, I think, and that's what we've been able to show. So from 2010 up until today, we've had we started in 2010 by having community campaigning, which led to a first wave of strikes. We weren't successful on that, but what we did do is we took some scalps with us, notably Brian Coleman, who is, how do I describe him? A bit like Osborne, basically. They're all much of a muchness. But he lost his seat in the GLA. We faced down threats to withdraw completely our facility time. In fact, I was on my way back to work last year because the facility time had been withdrawn. But then the council backed off, and ever since then we've been operating in the council because we just thought, well, you try and operate then without those negotiations. And they decided, they blinked first, basically. So we stayed in. And last year, the Tories came within one seat of losing the election completely, and we scalped the Tory councillor who was responsible for trying to withdraw our facility time. So he lost his seat. Our colleagues keep telling us that what are we achieving? Now, we have as well, we haven't completely stopped the privatisation, which is why we've had now our 5th day of strike action. But we have been holding off as well an entire change to our terms and conditions. The council wants to rip them all up, take us out of national pay bargaining, and they wanted to do that, introduce that in September 2013, and here we are, and they still haven't done it. And this is because I think they're scared. They're scared of us as well, as we feel that there is a tsunami of attacks on us. And I think what our branch has shown is that our view is, if we're going to be annihilated, then we will fight as hard as we can. We've got nothing to lose, and we will throw everything into a fight to defend our services, our jobs, our terms and conditions. And what we want is for our union leaders to do the same.
Thank you, Helen. One of the themes of Marxism this year is going to be about the absolute vicious racism and scapegoating that come from the top of society. But it gives me immense pleasure to announce that we have 3 speakers here today that managed to face up and fight back and stop the deportation of their friend in 2005, the Glasgow Girls, Amal Azadin, Rosa Sally and Pinar Aksu.
My goodness, there's no need for me to speak then. Thank you so much for that very, very warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. As you've heard from Emma, we are the Glasgow Girls. My name's Amal. I came to the UK in the year 2000. I came from East Africa, and in the year 2004, I was granted leave to remain, which meant I could live in the UK indefinitely. In the year 2005, something happened that changed my life forever, and that's the reason why I'm standing in front of you here today. Basically, one of my school friends, Agnesa, who's a Roma gypsy from Kosovo, was raided and detained. And was about to be deported back to Kosovo, even though she'd been living in Glasgow for 5 years at that time. She's done nothing wrong. She was living as a child. She was 15 years old. And 2005, 14 Home Office officials wearing bulletproof vests went to Agnesa's house and locked her up like a criminal. Her and her younger brothers were treated like criminals. They were locked in 2 detention-like vans and taken to Yarlswood Detention Centre here in England. And, none of the detention centres are obviously good, but I know that Yarlswood is the notorious one. It's the worst one out of all of them. There's 13 of them. And unfortunately, we have one in Scotland as well, Dungavel. So when that happened, I went to school on the Monday morning and I just thought to myself, I know I have leave to remain, I know I can stay in this country, but there's no way I'm going to sit down and do nothing about my friend. There's no way I'm going to sit down and do nothing about that. It's about humanity. Something in me awakened and I thought, I have to do something. I didn't know what I could do, but I knew I wanted to do something about it. So I went to Mr. Garvin, our bilingual teacher at Drumchapel High School, legend, my hero. He's absolutely amazing. And I said to him, look, Mr. Garvin, I don't understand why Agnesa, who's like me, she's 15 like me, has been treated like a criminal. She's done nothing wrong. Asylum seekers come to UK to seek protection, to seek sanctuary, not to be locked up like criminals. What's the point of them leaving a war-torn country only to be mentally tortured in the UK? What kind of government does that to people? So I've only got 3 minutes. I think I've got 1 minute left. So to cut the story short, basically, 3 weeks later, that's how our campaign started. So 3 weeks later, Agnesa was released from detention. Her family are back in Glasgow. She's working and she's really happy. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary in March, and just looking back at the 10 years, it's been amazing, the journey that, going to the Scottish Parliament and having a musical and a film about our story. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. But I think what makes our story so successful is because we raise so much awareness about what's happening to asylum seekers. And the thing is, what's so powerful about our campaign is that people from all walks of life came together. I mean, we had unions, we had organizations, community groups, politicians, we had cross-party support in the parliament, teachers. Everybody just came together and we were this really, really strong force, and the government couldn't get through to us. I mean, dawn raids calmed down after that, but unfortunately they're back. They are back. So basically, what I want to say is that even though there's negativity, even though David Cameron, Theresa May actually took part in the dawn raids, wore bulletproof vests and actually dawn raided a person, even though detention centers are still open, I'm never going to lose hope. Because I have hope in people like you. I have hope in humanity. I have hope that, we are going to win one day. And actually, just looking at other campaigns, like the Glasgow campaign to welcome refugees, Margaret told me that we managed to save 3,000 families in Glasgow. And that's amazing. That's what unity does. And I'll just finish by saying that as long as we are united, we can never be defeated. Thank you.
Well, it's going to be a hard speech after that, but I'll try my best. My name is Pinar Aksu, and I'm originally from Turkey. And myself and my family came here seeking asylum when I was 8 years old. And listening to what Amal said brings back a lot of memories, because we were detained twice as well. Twice in Dungavel, and we ended up staying in Jarlswood for 2 months. And we went through the same experience of 15 officers coming to our house 6 a.m. in the morning with my sister, who was 4 years old, my brother, who was 11 years old. The good thing was the people of Glasgow are amazing. Even though the weather is, but the people of Glasgow are amazing. And as a community, we united, and my teachers and Margaret Woods and Phil from the Unity and Glasgow campaign to welcome refugees, they managed to put a campaign, and we were out, and now we've got our leave to remain. And unfortunately, the bad thing is there are still detention centres which are going around and are open for adults. Good thing is it stopped for child, but again, the dawn raid has started, and it became like a business for the government, because they are allowing, now I just found out, they're allowing asylum seekers who are currently being held in detention centres to work for £1 a day. And why is that? To save money. They are trying to find every hole to save money, and this is the gap that they found. But I just want to say one thing. The problem is not asylum seekers or refugees. The problem is the failed system. The system that locks up children and locks up adults for something they've never done, for not committing crime, but except from fleeing from persecution and seeking asylum. I'm really looking forward to enjoying the rest of the week, and as Amal said, we will continue the fight, and this is the times that we need to stay united. And we have a chant from Glasgow that I'd like everyone to join. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Thank you.
Well, I think they said everything. My name is Rosa Salih, and I was actually named after Rosa Luxemburg, so I'll just start with that. I originally come from Kurdistan, and I'm sure you're aware of what's happening now. We're having a revolution of our own, and community coming together, and the left standing up to ISIS. I think Amal explained about the campaign of how we saved Agnesa, but I want to say we have similarities here. We're all standing up to the failed system, the anti-austerity that we are facing at the moment, and all this scapegoating on refugees and asylum seekers and migrants. This is the system of capitalism that want us to fight against each other. They want to divide us. We have to stand up to them and come together. I think both of my colleagues, they said that. And coming together, I think it's very, very crucial. Organizing a meeting like this is very important. And refugees right now are going through a really rough time, asylum seekers especially. I'm not sure how much you know about asylum seekers, but asylum seekers do not have the same rights as you do. They are a modern slavery today. You don't see chains on them, yes. That was in the old days. But now legislation, laws, everything's are against them. They cannot work. They do not get benefits. Their house is being locked from them. They don't have a house to stay. They have been denied education, which is the equal right of every human being everywhere. There's refugees coming from Mediterranean countries, it's the time of World War I. We have a massive of refugees. We are in a time of crisis, and the government are trying to make us enemy within each other. So I want to say, come together and fight against this system. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's incredible to hear your story. The Glasgow Girls have also asked me to announce the Justice for Sheikh Ubayo campaign launch and Deaths in Custody conference in Glasgow on Saturday the 25th of July, which also the campaign will be speaking at Marxism on Saturday along Diane Abbott, Wayman Bennett and Sabi Delu as part of the Fighting Racism meeting. Our next speaker is Jenny Sutton, who was the trade union and socialist coalition candidate for Tottenham in the most recent general election. Jenny led an absolutely fantastic grassroots campaign that really showed that a left alternative is possible, and she won over 1,300 votes. So without further ado, Jenny.
It does seem crazy, though, that in a democracy, after an election, you can get a party that won 24% of the vote and is now in power, pushing through policies that are going to disadvantage the majority. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that situation? Well, it's obvious, I think, that the Tories didn't win the election. It was Labour that lost the election because they didn't give us any reason to vote for them. What we saw was a real fragmentation. 25% of people voted for parties other than the big three this time because they didn't have a reason to vote. And I think what was clear in the election is that there was a real thirst for anti-austerity policies, real opposition from the grassroots. Every time that Miliband talked left, when he talked about scrapping the bedroom tax, when he talked about ending zero-hours contracts, they surged in the polls. But what they didn't offer was things that people would have voted for in a flash, like scrapping Trident, like nationalising the utilities, transport, the post office, basic things that if they'd said, we're going to do that, they would have won the election. It's not true to say that Labour were too right, that Labour were too left. Labour were too right. They didn't inspire. What they offered us was cuts and austerity light. They didn't challenge the demonisation of benefit claimants that's been such a toxic feature in the election campaign. And they echoed UKIP's racist lie that migrants are to blame for low wages and for lack of housing. But that should come as no surprise. It didn't come as any surprise for any of us, because that's been the pattern of Labour during this whole period of austerity. They haven't resisted. In 2011, 2.6 million workers out on strike. Had Labour supported that, that could have done austerity for good. But instead what's happened is we've seen the Tories implementing austerity through Labour. They've used devolving the axe to kind of to distance themselves from blame to some degree. Labour councils across the country have been hit far harder than Tory councils. Labour has got the cities. If the Labour Party had got any strategy for resistance, then again, it could have stopped austerity in their tracks. And the reason that I stood in Tottenham was because what's going on in Tottenham, in Haringey, is symbolic of what's happening everywhere. We've got a right-wing Labour council that are implementing 40% cuts in adult social care. They're outsourcing all services to the cheapest bidder. 25% cuts in the workforce and slashing services for disabled people, for elderly, for the youth and for children. They're attacking the poorest and most vulnerable, and that's a Labour council, and not one councillor voted against it. And the real scandal of what Labour have done over the last 5 years of austerity is that they have, council by council, area by area, they have colluded in austerity because they've managed it on a council by council basis. And what their policy in Tottenham was very explicit. We can't cope with cuts, so we've got to compensate by central government cuts by changing the demographics of Tottenham. The council in Haringey have got a very explicit policy of changing the demographics. Get rid of the poor, bring in the rich, because then we can generate more business income and then we can compensate for central government cuts. So the issue of social cleansing was one of the central features of our election campaign. We've got a Labour council in Tottenham that wants to sell off all the council homes to private developers who are going to build new homes that local people can't afford. They want to demolish Broadwater Farm Estate, that totemic estate where Winston Silcott came from, where Mark Duggan grew up, the place that has resisted racism more times than I can count. Already, we've got a Labour council relocating working class people to Enfield, to Southend, to Rotherham, to Manchester. Now, I'm sure those are fine places to live in, but it's not your community if you don't come from there. And even the council's own equality impact assessment, the Labour Council, their impact assessment said that their housing policy was going to impact on the non-white population disproportionately, and yet still they've driven ahead with it. And David Lammy, MP for Tottenham for 15 years, useless waste of space. David Lammy, running for London Mayor with funding from property developers, the same property developers who are coming in, hoovering up property in Tottenham and driving out local people. Well, that's why we had to stand in Tottenham. We had to challenge austerity, we had to challenge racism, and we had to challenge the Labour Council that was implementing such horrendous working class policies. But we knew we needed a rooted candidate, and we needed a real campaign. I stood in 2010. I've lived in Tottenham for 25 years. I've taught at the local college for 23 years. I've been a campaigner for all those years. And I think that was important because it meant that our campaign had a degree of credibility locally that meant we had real resonance on the streets. And I have to say, we had a brilliant campaign because it was really good fun, because the response that we were getting on the streets in Tottenham was amazing. Even though it wasn't reflected in the vote, and even though a lot of people said, we love what you're saying, it's absolutely right, we've got to vote Labour. Labour's vote went up across London, even though communities across London are being hammered by Labour councils. But Labour's vote went up because people were fearful of the Tories. But 40% of the electorate didn't vote in Tottenham. But I think the critical thing is what we did is we laid the basis for the fights to come. And that's really critical, because 50,000 families in London have been relocated by social cleansing. Our community is going to be savaged by the caps on working tax credit. And we are planning already, in September, we are going to have a march for homes and communities in Tottenham, because the working class are being driven out of London and we have to fight for our communities. And what we know is that Labour won't fight for us. Even though it's great that Corbyn is there, we know, we've already seen, he will modify his position to appeal to the centre ground. We need unity of the left, but we need unity of socialists, because what we've got to recognise is that the system isn't working for us. It's not working for working class communities. It's not working for the people of Tottenham. It's not working for all of us. We've got to unite. We've got to fight to change the system. And let's have a revolution at some point.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. So the politicians and the bosses want us to scapegoat migrants and migrant workers. However, the bosses at Sotheby's showed their true colours last week when, after a group of mainly migrant workers picketed a £1 million sale, they showed up for work the next day and were told to go home. So I think we need to give an absolutely warm welcome of solidarity to Percy and Barbara, sacked Sotheby's workers, and their union rep Petrus.
What's my name? Emma. As Emma said, I'm the union rep, and I'll try and keep my speech brief so you can hear from more from Percy and Barbara. But just to say a little bit about our union, which is called United Voices of the World, which is a small grassroots union which is comprised almost entirely of migrant workers in London's service sector. And I see that message there, migrants are welcome here, and that's, you know, it's good to see that written somewhere instead of hearing the usual vitriol from the government and other groups. And, you know, people talk a lot about migrants keeping wages down, whereas in our union, we're fighting living wage campaigns and we're winning them, and they're all being fought by migrant workers. And actually, many of the other workers that may be British-born in the places where we're organising, they're not for various reasons involved. So I'm actually seeing migrant workers, you know, bringing wages up. You know, they're taking wages from the minimum wage to the living wage. And we're involved in many disputes at the moment. We recently won in the multinational law firm Withers the London Living Wage, which they were all earning the minimum wage, and after the threat of direct and industrial action, they caved within a week, which was just fantastic. And they all bumped up their wages to the living wage and backdated it. We're involved in disputes in the Barbican Centre, where again we won the living wage, and we're currently fighting for sick pay. And sorry, I didn't prepare a speech, obviously, sorry. Anyway, just to say, in Sotheby's, if we could have all the support, and you'll hear more from Percy and Barbara, because as you'll hear from them, we were pushing for, we wanted the living wage here, we wanted it backdated, we wanted sick pay, and we wanted an end to trade union victimisation. We went out there to protest. The next day they went into work, and they threw them out like a bag of potatoes the next day. And they even said shamelessly, the reason we're firing you is because you protested. So when companies have actually been open about that, then it's pretty scary. But we are determined to carry on, and we'll be there every single week until we get them reinstated.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. Me and Barbara and the other two guys, we were protesting, asking for that living wage backdated, sick pay, and stop the trade union victimization. We went last Wednesday to protest with the support of many other groups. So next day, when we were to work, we were stopped at the door saying that we not allow anymore to outside because we were protesting yesterday, and what we asking is any support will be very appreciated. As Petro said, we're gonna go every week because we're not gonna give up. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Barbara. I'm working at Sotheby since 2009. And as Petro explained, we participate in the protest demanding our contractual sick pay and the London living wages backdated. So that was on 30th of June, and the next day, 1st of July, we went to work as normal, and we've been stopped at the door saying that the client has requested our removal from the site. So personally, I had my personal stuff, my medicine in my locker, and I asked to the boss, please, if they could let me in. And I was escorted by a security guard. I was treated like I was a criminal. So it's really disgraceful from Sotheby's. We do such a great job for them, and this is how they treat us. So we are here to ask you for your support. Please come to support for our campaigns, come to the protest. Please stay, keep in touch on Facebook with the United Voices of the World, on Twitter. Please write to Sotheby's. We want our jobs back. We haven't done absolutely nothing wrong. We only practice our right, which is the protest. So please, we ask you for support. Thank you.
Thursday, 6 p.m.
So officially, we would like to invite you on Thursday. Which day is it?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday at 6 p.m. We're going to meet at Oxford Circus Station, where the Benetton, the shop is. And after, we all go together to Sotheby's. Thank you.
So everybody in London put the 16th of July in their diaries. All right, our next set of speakers have been leading an absolutely incredible strike against privatisation. And the bosses and the government have done everything to beat them, including sacking their rep, Candy Udwin. So please give a warm welcome of solidarity to Sharma Lynn, Lynn Boothright, Rima Sharma and Candy Udwin from the National Gallery.
No way! Here to stay! Wow, thank you. That was really amazing, and it's amazing to be here to tell you about our campaign and our struggle with what's happening at the National Gallery. My name is Rima. I work at the National Gallery. I've been there for 7 years. Currently, we have been on 46 days of strike action. We're on strike over plans to privatise 2/3 of the workforce at the National Gallery. That's all the front-facing customer service and security. The plans to privatise were instigated by a private security consultant that was placed in the gallery, who previously worked for G4S. And surprise, surprise, G4S are one of the companies that have ended up on the tendering list. We have had a private security company already introduced into 1/3 of the gallery. They were initially put there to cover one of our temporary exhibitions, the Rembrandt, and then they were placed into the whole of the Sainsbury's wing, so that's 1/3 of the gallery. They are covering work that is normally done by existing staff, so we have currently staff doubled up, even tripled up in other areas of the gallery. The staff there are on very low wages, and it's meant a lot of people rely on overtime. That overtime is now not available, and people are really finding it difficult to get by. Our fantastic, amazing union rep, Candy Udwin, who's behind me, was dismissed by the gallery on charges of gross misconduct for drafting a question about the cost of the private company and how much they're costing the public purse. The totally trumped up charges. She has supported us throughout our campaign, and she's not actually one of the people facing the privatisation, so we all would love to say massive big thanks to Candy. And just to add a couple of our achievements is we have actually won the living wage, which is a massive battle. And we've had a fantastic rally in Trafalgar Square, supported by amazing artists like Mark Wallinger, Bob and Roberta Smith, Ken Loach, and Mark Sawatka came and said it's not very often you have an opportunity to protest with thousands of people in front of the actual building. So it was a real massive thing. I'm going to leave it to Lynn to take over.
Hello, I'm Lynn, a gallery assistant at the National Gallery. A number of weeks ago, a colleague, Alex, and I were wondering if it would be possible as a union and strikers to join in Pride. And thanks to Alan from SWP and Nicola from LGSM, Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners, we found ourselves at a meeting of LGSM where they very generously asked us to join them and other trade unions in the Pride March. And it was also decided that we would have a party on the picket line at the entrance to the Sainsbury wing. We were a bit worried about the amount of support we would get from colleagues, but in the event we need to have worried because we had tremendous support. Colleagues joined the march, and other colleagues had set up a stall at the Sainsbury entrance to the Sainsbury wing with all kinds of goodies, and we raised quite a lot of money, several £100s with that. So we've certainly got solidarity at the National Gallery, as far as we're concerned anyway, the strikers. Thank you.
Yeah,
It obviously is a fantastic thing that we've been on strike for 46 days. It's even more fantastic that actually we're planning to be on strike next week, the week after, and actually every week until the middle of August, when we're planning to escalate the action further. And the reason why that is, and I'd like to thank the people in this room, and to the Socialist Workers' Party. But the reason why we are still fighting in that way is because of the fantastic solidarity and the support that we've had. But I think that we can all take heart from that, because it reflects something, the support that we've had. It reflects our dispute, shows that there's a mood in this country for a fight back and for resistance. We don't have a movement like in Greece at the moment, but since the election, something different has been going on. New people have been on demonstrations who've never been before, and we know that there is a taste for strikes, for direct action, for any form of resistance. And when people fight back, they get support. And I think that means we've all got a challenge. The left in this country has got a task, really, as to whether we can mobilise that mood for a fight back into a fighting force that can really take on this government. And I think, we know that we need national action and that we need action from our unions nationally, but actually we can't wait for that. I'm really proud that yesterday on Budget Day, there were 8 trade unions in London. We coordinated our strikes and we all came out on strike together. If we can do that, it shows what is possible. But what we desperately need are bigger and wider networks, because we need those networks to coordinate our action. We need those networks to make sure that we support the Sotheby's workers and we don't let what the government are trying to do, which is to divide us and come and scare us and come with all of their attacks on our rights and our rights to protest and our trade union rights. What we have to say is, if that's what scares them, if that's what scares the bosses, if that's what scares the government, our protests and our strike action, then what we need to do is to give them more of that. And so we need more victories, and your support, and with your support, hopefully we can make sure that our strikes doesn't just win, but shows a way forward for people and can be a catalyst to help encourage other people to fight back as well. So thanks very much.
It gives me absolutely immense pride to introduce our next speaker. It's incredibly exciting, has just flown in from Athens. Has flown in from Athens for Marxism and will be speaking at Marxism over the course of the event. Panos Garganas is a member of SEC, the SWP sister organisation, and is also the editor of their newspaper. I don't really think I can say much more. I just want to say immense pleasure and pride to be able to announce Panos.
Thanks, comrades. Greetings from your comrades and the fighters in Greece that managed to win this vote by a landslide victory, a victory against austerity, a victory that belongs to all of us, no matter where we are. Obviously for the workers in Greece that face such a tough fight, but from what I heard from all the speakers up to now, this is a victory for all of us, no matter where we are carrying our fight. What makes it even more important is because this was a very polarized situation, class polarized. The ruling class in Greece threw everything they had into winning this referendum, into winning the yes vote. There's every power that you can think of: the Confederation of Greek Industry, the church, the owners of the press and the TV channels. Everybody that was anybody in the ruling class had come out to support and urge that people should vote yes. And if the arguments were not enough, and if the urging was not enough, then blackmail was used extensively. To see how polarized the situation was, you take a glance at the results. The no vote won. The highest percentage for the yes vote, for the yes side, was in the rich suburb in the north of Athens. It's called Ekali. That's where the rich people live. There they got 80% for the yes vote. And at the other end, right across Athens, in Perama, where people who work in the shipyards live, and where we've had the highest levels of poverty and unemployment, there it was 80% for the no vote. So we had two classes at the extreme ends of these forces that clashed in the referendum. It wasn't just the Greek ruling class using all its power to blackmail people into voting for their side. They had on their side the rulers of the European Union. Every single government and every single institution in the European Union came out in support of the yes vote, and they didn't restrict themselves to just saying what they thought. They used every way they could blackmail people. They shut down the banks. It wasn't the Greek government that shut down the banks. It was the European Central Bank, with a conscious decision that had been escalated over the previous months. Condition after condition, restricting the liquidity of the banks, forcing the closure, so that people would have to go to the vote in a situation where the scare campaign was taking off. The scare campaign was saying, if you vote no, there will be a catastrophe, that will be the end of the Greek economy, you will be all unemployed, you will lose all your benefits, so you have to vote yes, even if yes means cuts and austerity, because the catastrophe that will follow from a no vote will be even worse. And to prove the point, they shut down the banks. All these people, all these politicians in the European Union that say that they stand for European values, they stand for reason, they stand for the Enlightenment, for democracy, they showed themselves just how hypocritic they are, how terrible they are, not only in lying and blackmailing, but also in coming openly against democracy, saying openly that the problem in Greece is that you lot have voted the wrong way. You have voted a left government, and therefore you have to pay. You have to be forced into a situation where the vote that you had last January will be annulled. You're going to have another government, a government of technocrats that will implement austerity and will ignore the vote of the Greek people. They were as terrible as that, and they used every way they could push this line. And even after they lost the referendum, they continue in the same way. They just ignore the fact that people voted for the no vote in Greece, and they want the Greek government to sign an austerity deal, and if it does not, they threaten that they will punish the Greek people with a forced exit from the euro. Now, we don't stand for the euro and the European Union, but a forced exit is their way of blackmailing people that if the government does not submit to the austerity plan, we can impose, they say, the European Union leaders say, we can impose austerity and pain in other ways too. We can produce a situation where the Greek economy collapses. So they have used all these weapons, but they have not succeeded. It was obvious that they were not going to succeed before Sunday. The vote took place last Sunday. Last Friday, there were simultaneous rallies in the center of Athens. A rally in favor of no, right outside Parliament in Syntagma Square, and then half a mile down the road, there was a rally for the yes side. The yes side claimed that they had 10,000 people at their rally. Let us be generous and accept the number. It wasn't true, but let's say they had 10,000 people there. How does that compare with the rally for the no vote? The lowest estimate is 100,000. The real numbers were probably 300,000 people. I don't have a large enough picture to show you. This is the Greek equivalent of the Socialist Review. This is a picture of Syntagma Square on Friday night. It was overflowing, not just the square, but all the main streets, the largest arteries of Athens that lead to the square were full of people. A large crowd, a militant crowd, a very clear indication of what was coming up on Sunday. So, how was that achieved? How did it come about that despite all the forces of class power, the forces of capitalism throwing their weight behind the yes campaign, how did workers resist? Well, there was a fantastic fight back. Let me give you some examples. There were many workplaces that are not fully unionized. And the bosses there said, if you don't go to the yes rally, the next day don't come to work. You're going to get the sack. So they tried to bus people to the yes rally. And in some places, the workers could not organize a walkout and resisted. So they got into the buses and went to the place where they were meant to go to the yes rally. And then when they got off the bus, they marched to the no rally. I'm happy to report that in one of these places, a call center, in the thick of this workers' walkout, was a young woman whose roots are in Albania. She's the daughter of immigrants that have come to Albania. She reached the age of 19, 20, and still couldn't get her rights as a Greek citizen, despite the fact that she was born in Greece, grew up in Greece. So, in theory, this woman would have been isolated. She isn't Greek, she's a migrant, she didn't have any rights. But she led the walkout. And this is an indication of the politics inside the Greek working class. Against austerity, but also for the refugees, for the migrants, against the fascists. People were prepared to take their lead from the child of a migrant family. And I'm happy to say she's a SEC member too. A second example. The Tory party in Greece, New Democracy they're called, well, we can't help it. They produced a document in the middle of the campaign, giving instructions to the media how they should handle the yes propaganda. Part of the instructions was that they should target women. Women will be more easily scared by the scare campaign. They are worried about their children, if they will be able to go through the school, if they will find a job. So they said, this is a soft target, go for them. What was the end result? According to the exit polls, women voted for the no side in larger numbers than men. And the other target group was old age pensioners. Well, they are weak. They are vulnerable. So the scare campaign should target them. Last night, as we were preparing to come to London, we had to go to an ATM. The banks are shut. People go to the ATM. They're allowed to get 60 euros in theory. In practice, the banks give only 50 euros. And there are queues. And there's been a lot of speculation in the press that the queues are the breeding ground for the yes vote, because it's mostly aged people who are there, and they are angry because the banks are shut and so on and so forth. There was a small queue at the ATM, not many people, about 10 people, and the discussion amongst them was, who are these bastards who think they can scare us? They need Greece more than we need them. So they completely miscalculated. Even the weakest sections, if we accept this kind of reasoning, turned out to be strong enough to turn the tide against them. This is a fighting spirit that obviously has to do with all the tradition, all the fights that we have seen in Greece in the previous years, but it has also to do with the fighting spirit inside the left. This is something that we need to be proud of, comrades. What a difference the revolutionary left can make in situations like that. This is not something that we can claim for ourselves. One of the main speakers at the Yes rally came out with this idea. This is a government of the left, and they should not be doing things like that, calling a referendum and asking people to vote no. But they are doing this because they are under the influence of Andarsia, the anti-capitalist left. Now, if the other side says things like that, obviously we say thank you very much, yes. But it's not just us. It's not just us. After the vote was counted and the no vote had won, the secretary of Syriza made a statement thanking Andalusia for the role they played in the campaign and for winning the no side to win the vote. So I think the contribution of the revolutionary left was important, both in terms of all the struggles that came before the referendum and in terms of the campaign during the short week that led to the vote. I think that this is something that we have to keep in mind in what's coming up. Winning the vote was a crucial step. It was an important political victory, but it wasn't the end of the road. They have the power of economic blackmail to say that, okay, no matter how you vote, in the end, the forces of capital will crush you. And this is what's coming up. Workers in Greece will have to resist to make the forces of capital respect the way they voted. And the way to do that will be through strike action. Tomorrow evening, there's a meeting of trade unionists in Athens, and they will be debating exactly this, that now, in order to avoid a situation where the powers of the European Union are forcing the government into implementing austerity, the only way we can resist this is not by repeating the vote, but now using a much stronger weapon, a weapon that the working class has the power to utilize, strikes. This is what's coming up, comrades, a confrontation whether austerity will be implemented or not. And that's why solidarity is very, very important. I'd like to end with that. I want to thank everybody who has taken steps in solidarity with Greece. I would like to thank, first of all, the tube strikers. It's great. I'd like to thank all the groups that belong to the International Socialist Tendency for producing a statement that urged people to demonstrate throughout last week, and we have seen demonstrations that left-wingers across Europe came out to support the No campaign. I'd like to thank Socialist Worker for reporting on the fight in Greece. That was inspiration for us. And of course, I want to thank each and every one of you, because I'm sure this solidarity movement will continue in the coming weeks, and it will be crucial for the fight in Greece. It will be crucial for the broader movement, for the left in Greece, and it will be crucial for us who are trying to raise in this situation one very important slogan. Our future is not capitalism, it is revolution and socialism.
Thank you, Panos. I think that we are sending a very clear message of solidarity to the Greek working class. Those of you who want to hear Panos speak again, he'll be speaking on Sunday at 2 o'clock in Elvin on Greece, keeping the hope for change alive. Our final speaker this evening, I want to give a really special welcome to Amy Leather. member of the Central Committee of the Socialist Workers' Party, but also the lead organiser of Marxism 2015. Please give Amy an incredibly warm welcome for organising this brilliant event.
Wow, okay. Well, I have to say, what a privilege it is actually to be here speaking alongside all these other speakers that we've heard from. And listening to them all, you get a real sense of the turmoil across the world, of a system in crisis, of the horror it produces, but also the hope. Because on the one hand, we face this crushing assault from the Tories, the Troika, the EU, the European Central Bank, the IMF, but then on the other hand, the resistance, whether that's in Greece, as we just heard from Panos, or today in London, where workers on the underground shut down the city. Who says workers don't have any power when 20,000 workers shut down a city of millions? And all this comes just 2 months after the Tories got elected. The Tories, who have already presided over the biggest fall in living standards over the last 5 years, they want to continue that onslaught. Let's not be fooled by Osborne's budget yesterday and his promise of a living wage of £7.20. By the way, that is less than the living wage foundation says is needed to live on. And you're not even going to get it if you're under 25 years old. You're not even going to get housing benefit anymore if you're under 21. And you're not going to get any grants, what were left of them, if you're a young person. And that's on top of the £12 billion worth of cuts from benefits. And the truth is, if they really, really wanted to do something about scroungers or something about the people taking something for nothing, then why don't the Tories take on one of their own? One of their own, Tory MP Richard Benyon. He's worth £125 million, except he still claims £49,000 in housing benefits from his tenants. So let's not be fooled. These people are waging class war on us. So it's fantastic to hear from all the strikers here tonight. And it was brilliant to see 250,000 people out on the streets on the People's Assembly demonstration against austerity a few weeks ago. But the thing is, the Tories claim, don't they? They claim they have a mandate. We were elected. That's democracy. We can do what we want to. Yet when workers vote for strike action, it's a bit of a different story. How dare they disrupt our lives? It's anti-democratic. And in fact, the Tories want to make it even harder to go on action, to take action and go on strike. They want to make it illegal to go on strike unless there's a 50% turnout in the ballot. And in services like health, education and transport, 40% of all those able to vote must vote yes. By that logic, the Tories wouldn't be in government. They only won 37% of the votes cast. Less than a quarter of people who could vote actually supported them. But they claim to have a mandate to destroy our lives, whilst those defending our services don't. But why are, the Tories so intent on attacking the trade unions? It was actually one of the first things they announced after they got elected. Even the Financial Times, which is not really a left-wing paper, asked this. They were like, the bigger problem in Britain, the bigger problem facing business is low productivity at the moment, not strikes. And the reason is that the Tories know what their project that they've set themselves for the last 5 years means. A reshaping of the economy in the interest of big business and capital, continuing the massive transfer of wealth to the rich, a process that has already seen the richest 1,000 people in Britain double their wealth during the financial crisis. And the thing is, they're not stupid. Very nasty, but not completely stupid. They know we're the majority. And we remember our history, don't we? That's something we're going to be discussing over the next few days. But they remember history too. They remember that it was the miners that brought down the Tory government in 1974. The miners came close to winning at certain points when they took on Thatcher in 1984. They understand the power workers have when they take action, and it scares them. And so just as Margaret Thatcher laid the ground to take on the miners, they want to make it really hard to go on strike so they can ram through their attacks. Not only are they making new laws to make it harder to win a ballot, they've actually set up a hit squad to combat strikes. It's a team dedicated to breaking strikes, to find ways to make them illegal, to change the law so that agency workers can replace strikers, i.e. legalise scabbing. And that's why we have to resist every attack on our right to organise and stand by every worker on strike, because every victory, no matter how small, has an impact. You think about the Dundee porters, all-out strike for 13 weeks over low pay. They won this week. They won a 7% pay rise. We should shout about that. It should give inspiration to every group of workers that we've heard from tonight and others. You can fight and win. And we have to link up and get behind any group of people fighting back. From the protesters like those from the Disabled People Against Cuts who occupied the Houses of Parliament the other week. Or the students who took to the streets just days after the Tories got back in. And the thing is, the People's Assembly demonstration has to be the beginning, not the end of the protest. We all need to get to Manchester on the 4th of October to take our message to the Tory party conference that we are learning Greek and we say "oki" to austerity. Because the demos are important. They give us confidence. It makes us realise it's not just me who hates the Tories. But the truth is, we need the strikes that the Tories are so scared of. And the fact is, if 4 different unions on the tube can take action together, then why can't we do this in every workplace? If council workers in Bromley and council workers in Barnet and the National Gallery strikers and in total 8 trade unions can coordinate their strikes to be on the same day as the tube strikes began like they did yesterday, then why can't the leaders of the national unions coordinate their actions? And if the Glasgow homelessness workers, who are going to join Marxism later in the weekend, they've been out now for 15 weeks on all-out action. If they can stay out, then we need to demand national action that goes beyond the one-day strike. We need to tell the trade union leaders it's not enough to talk about the horrors of the Tories. We need effective action as well. But you see, besides trying to attack our right to strike, there's another weapon that the Tories use against us, and that's the weapon of division. Of vicious, nasty, racist scapegoating, attacking migrants, desperate people who travel thousands of miles across land and sea to escape war-torn countries, poverty, repression, people with literally nothing. They're the problem, we're told. And so we see these horrific pictures of people clinging to lorries or squashed into boats that aren't even seaworthy as they try and enter Fortress Europe. Last year alone, 3,500 people drowned in the Mediterranean Sea as they tried to get into Europe. Another 1,700 had died by April this year. I call that mass murder. And the blood is on the hands of those politicians, those European leaders who sit in their conference centres and eat their luxury meals and argue about who's going to take those people. Argue about should they stop the rescue missions because it encourages people to come. Talk about bombing the boats because then they won't be able to come. How they're going to increase the border controls between Italy and France. How they're going to build a fence like the 2-mile-long one Cameron is sending fencing to Calais to try and stop migrants coming to Britain, or the one that Hungary is building on its border with Serbia. That is the reality of Fortress Europe. And we say these people like Rosa and Amal and Pinar, who we've heard from, they are our friends. They are welcome here. We are for open borders. Don't let people drown. We want the free movement of people in Europe and across the world. But let's be clear here, because if you're going to take on that scapegoating, then you don't win an argument that immigrants are not to blame by conceding to it. When there is a vicious, racist populist party like UKIP, who put arguments to the election that everything was the fault of migrants, that asylum seekers with HIV shouldn't be treated in Britain, then you do not take them on by producing a mug that says controls on immigration, as the Labour Party did in that election campaign. Instead, you take on the lies, you expose them and you argue against them. And the SWP was very proud to be part of the Stand Up to UKIP campaign in the election. It was right to argue that UKIP are anti-working class and that they're racist and to campaign. And what a brilliant result that Nigel Farage did not get elected. That shows the impact. That shows the impact campaigning can have. That you can stand up to racist lies, you give other people confidence, and you can win people away from the politics of hate. And the thing is, although Farage is not an MP, he's not gone. And it's not the end of the scapegoating. UKIP might have been the most extreme, but actually they were only following what the Tories and Labour did, and they're continuing to do. And the issue of immigration is not going away. Because you have to ask yourself, why are people so desperate? Why do pregnant women about to give birth get on those boats? It's because the alternative they face is even worse. According to the UN, 1 in every 122 humans on the planet is a refugee due to war, violence or persecution. That's 60 million people forced to leave their homes, the highest number in history. The largest driver of this is the war in Syria. 1 in every 5 displaced people across the world is Syrian. More than half the world's refugees come from Syria, Afghanistan and Somalia. And now the Tories, with it seems support from Labour, are talking about bombing Syria. They say they need to do this to stop ISIS, stop the spread of its horrific regime, that we have to do something. But let's just stop and think what bombing actually means. Bombs do not discriminate between ISIS fighters and other people. They will kill and maim everyone. Men, women, children, babies. They destroy houses, roads, schools, hospitals. Bombing will create more refugees. And will it solve the problem? Because actually the UK has been involved in bombing ISIS targets in Iraq. It's been 300 airstrikes. That hasn't stopped ISIS. And when you look at Iraq, you can really see what war and bombing can lead to. Because let's remember, it was Tony Blair and George Bush who took us into an illegal war in 2003. They said it would bring peace, they said it would bring stability and democracy. Instead, it left 1 million Iraqis dead, millions more injured and maimed. They smashed up a country, then occupied it, and then stoked up sectarian division in order to keep the West influence there. ISIS grew out of the destruction of Iraq and the sectarian divisions there. It's a consequence of Western imperialism. Bombing will not stop it growing. But you see, probably should be a bit careful what I say about ISIS, because perhaps by saying that Western imperialism played a role in helping create them, I am quietly condoning them, as Cameron's put it. So I better be clear. We don't support ISIS. They're a brutal, violent organisation. Except there are quite a lot of brutal, violent organisations. In fact, one of them is the US police. The deaths of people like Michael Brown, Eric Garner and others have brought to the world's attention just how brutal they are. You know, there's a website, and it counts how many people have been killed by the US police. Yesterday, when I checked it, it was 584 people killed already this year by the police in America, most of them shot. Some brutal, violent organisations are in fact states. One such state is the Israeli state. A year ago this week, it killed thousands of Palestinians when they launched their barbaric assault on Gaza. Except you don't hear much from David Cameron about that, really. Perhaps he's quietly condoning them. Or in fact, actually, given over the last 3 years the UK has exported £42 million worth of arms to Israel, perhaps he's not just quietly condoning, but actively supporting the terror that those weapons unleash on the Palestinians. But you see, it's not a joke when I say that we should be careful what we say, because if you're a Muslim in Britain at the moment, then you probably feel like you do need to be careful, because not content with scapegoating migrants fleeing from the wars he backed, David Cameron has launched a war on Muslims living here in Britain. Not a day goes by when we don't hear about Islam being an extremist ideology, stories about bomb and terror plots, or a family going to Syria. There's a new terror act that just came in force last week, a much stronger version of Labour's racist prevent strategy. Now you've got teachers, health workers, local government workers acting as spies to report anyone who disagrees with fundamental British values, whatever they are. Even childminders have been told they have to monitor Muslim toddlers for signs of radicalism and radicalisation. And we actually have the true situation of a young Muslim boy at primary school who expressed support for Greenpeace and saving the whales. He was quizzed on his views on direct action and democracy. So again, we are very clear in the SWP. We stand shoulder to shoulder with Muslims in Britain. They are our sisters and brothers, not the enemy within. And we have to be clear, the onslaught is going to be big. And they start with Muslims, but they move on to everyone else. You can't protest against the bombing of Syria. It means you support ISIS. In fact, maybe you can't protest at all because it's against the Tories, and that's against democracy. After all, they won the election. Because lots of this is couched in terms of democracy, that somehow Islamism is not compatible with Western democracy. But quite clearly, as Panos outlined, the Tories and the ruling class don't always like democracy themselves. They're quite happy to dispense with it. The Greek people sent a very clear message that they were against austerity and the cuts. Still, they're trying to blackmail, bully them, intimidate them into it. It's even the same here. Last week, there was a very brilliant victory in Lancashire when elected councillors there voted to stop Quadrilla, the energy company, fracking for oil. Fantastic. That was democracy. They voted, elected councillors, not to do it. But no, you think it's democracy, they're going to appeal. They're going to appeal to the Tories to intervene. The Spectator was clear. They said, democracy is very superior, but something went wrong in Lancashire. You see, there are also sections of the ruling class and the Tories who don't like democracy, even in other parties. Just think about the Labour leadership election. You might think, it's great Jeremy Corbyn is on the ballot paper. Isn't it great there can be more debate and choice? Except sections of the ruling class are up in arms about it. The Daily Mail, the Telegraph, mouthpieces of the Tories and the ruling class, calling it batshit crazy, I quote, that is even on the ballot paper. So we live in a democracy, but some views are out of bounds, because they know what Jeremy Corbyn represents. He expresses the anger people feel at what the Tories are doing, giving voice to those opposing austerity and war. So it's good that he's on the ballot paper. The bigger the vote, the better. But we have to ask, when you look at the turmoil and horror in the world, is the election of Jeremy Corbyn really going to be enough? Is it really possible that one person can reclaim a party that took us into Iraq, that still has Tony Blair in it, a party that accepted the needs for cuts and austerity, refuses to support strikers, and argues migrants are part of the problem? You see, our goal as socialists is not just to manage capitalism, but it's to get rid of it altogether. It's about having more democracy, where it's not just about voting every 5 years, but actually every decision can be discussed and decided by ordinary people. We'd be discussing, should we leave the fossil fuels in the ground and invest in renewables? Let's fund hospitals and schools, not war. Because these things are possible. I mean, they say we have to have the cuts and austerity because there's not enough money. There's plenty of money. Europe's 13 richest people have $378 billion between them. That's enough to pay off Greece's entire debt and leave some extra for a bit more. And there's always money for war. Just remember the US spent $1.7 trillion on the Iraq war. But the thing is, they won't just give up their wealth. That means we're going to have to take it off them. And that means talking about revolution, not just reform. And the theme for Marxism Festival is ideas for revolution. And we need the ideas. That's what we're going to do over the next few days, discuss and learn. But the thing is, it needs to be more than an idea. It needs to be a reality. And it's not a crazy thing to think about, is it? We live in this time of turmoil where the old certainties are crumbling. Who would have predicted a year ago that the Scottish independence campaign would have come so close to winning and produced such a great social movement that is continuing and would wipe Labour off, the country? Who would have predicted the crisis that's going on in Greece that may see them exit the euro, that they want to continue there? And so at a time when capitalism is offering us permanent austerity and the normalisation of horror and war, we need an alternative. And we've seen parts of it, haven't we? We hear the stories from Greece, the strikers shutting down London. We just see what is possible when we take action. Because when we talk of revolution, it's not just sitting back and waiting for the glorious day. It means fighting now. It means fighting on all the issues we've touched on tonight. Cuts, war, poverty, racism, the whole future of the planet, making sure it doesn't, global warming doesn't destroy the whole basis for life. We have to fight over all those issues to make a difference now. But we have to be clear, these issues are linked. They flow from the logic of capitalism, a system all about profit for the tiny elite at the top, not the needs of the majority. And as we've seen, our enemy is organised. The Tories, the ruling class, they know it's a battle and they're prepared to be brutal. And so we have to be organised too. Because in the turmoil of events, In the midst of struggle, we need clarity and leadership. It needs people who can point a way forward in the struggles. In fact, in ways that all the speakers have talked about, whether that's in Greece on the streets or in the workplace, leading strike action, standing up for migrants, pointing a way forward. We need people in every office, in every call centre, in every factory, school, college, hospital, community, who can help drive through the resistance with a clarity about how the world can be changed. And so that's why we have a party, to bring those people together. That's why, if you're not a member of the Socialist Worker Party, we ask you to join us here at Marxism, because we need to be bigger if we're going to take on the task ahead of us. If you agree with what you've heard of tonight, then join us. Join us in the battles that we face today, and join us in the fight for a world without austerity, racism, sexism, oppression and exploitation. Oki to austerity, solidarity.